Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're talking about the top 5 cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. I feel like every content creator is howling now because of this set. And we're getting it. Let's do it. The first thing that I want to cover is how I'm stacking these cards up against one another, because that's very important in how we're ranking them. We want to be covering the accessibility, the flexibility, the payoff, and how that relates to power. And so let's get right into it. We have our honorable mentions from Innistrad Midnight Hunt, and our first one is the Celestis. Now this card's great. I actually love it for a 3-mana rock that taps for 1 of any color, but the big thing is the external game mechanic and how that's going to relate to the future of the game. The best thing about the day-night mechanic and most of these external mechanics that they're introducing to the game is that they're passive and they just kind of sit there. It's kind of like the city's blessing. And that's a great thing. It's not a knock against it, because with the Celestis, as long as it's on the battlefield and day and night is still happening in the background, which if you are playing day and night in your decks, keep track of that shit, because no one else is going to do it for you. But if you're playing the Celestis, you might want to keep track of it, because every time it switches between day and night, you're going to gain a life, draw, and discard a card. You're going to loot 1, gain 1. So that's why it's in our honorable mentions. The next card is Sunset Revelry. Oh my god, I love what they've been doing with white lately, because so far in the past, white has just been, I don't know, thrown a dry bone. There's no meat on it. You're constantly playing catch up. It's not a good feeling. In the game, when you're playing mono white and you're just sitting there, always playing from behind. And this card says, hey, we acknowledge that white players have been playing from behind for years now, and so we're going to give you a 2-mana option to catch back up. What are the odds of someone who's going to have more life than you at a table of 4, who's going to control more creatures than you at a table of 4, and someone who is going to have more cards in hand than you at a table of 4? I think this one just makes a lot of sense as a plugin, and maybe in more casual, like 5-6 power range for white decks, and it gets slotted out later on when you're looking for a more competitive edge. All right, everybody, are you ready for this? We're talking about number 5, and that's Auger of Autumn. This card's great. It is Courser of Kruphix, staple to Vizier of the Menagerie. And well, for a little bit more of a condition, ultimately, Auger of Autumn is the number 5 card for a reason. Don't get me wrong, it is great and it is powerful to have both of those effects sort of like blended together, but I mean, playing a land off the top of your library and casting creatures off the top of your library is a form of card advantage, but I don't think you're going to see this in every green deck, and I don't think you're going to see this at every table, which is why I think there are better cards from the set itself. Number 4, Morbid Opportunist. I think this card is even greater for card advantage than Auger of Autumn is. If you're playing into this, if you're putting this into your strategy, I think that you can trigger it on each player's turn. Drawing cards, as we all know, is fantastic. We all love doing it. It's the greatest feeling in the world. To pick one up at the beginning of the turn, like, yeah, great. But the second that you get to pick up a second card when you shouldn't is when cards really start speaking to me. Like, wow, that card's great. So I think Morbid Opportunist has a lot of potential, and it's one of those cards, it's not as good as the Black Pilfer Uncommon Pirate. God, I can't think of his name right now. Ugh. Cutthroat? Something? Damn. Morbid Opportunist is going to see play in a lot of decks, and it's one of those cards where I'm considering getting a playset of 4 foils, because once the card pool starts to dry out in about a year or two, I think that's going to be an expensive card, like $4 or $5 for a foil if you really, really wanted it. So, yeah, number 4, Morbid Opportunist. Number 3, Vanquish the Horde at number 3. I don't know. I think it might just be the best destroy all creatures card in the game. I know it looks intimidating. 8 mana can be. It costs 1 less for each creature that's already on the battlefield. And let's just look around the table. Oh, wow. This is a 2 mana safety valve. I can just clear the board and then have a majority of my resources left over so that I can rebuild before anybody else can. Yeah, that's the level of power we're looking at. Where I know that like the can't be regenerated text on Wrath of God can be somewhat enticing. Regenerate is a mechanic that hasn't been alive for a while. I don't think it's really seen play, or at least mainstream play, in a long time. The one knock against Vanquish the Horde is that it's sorcery speed, because a lot of the time at higher power levels, the board wipe often comes a little too late. The combo goes off and you're sitting there and you're like, I would have had you next turn because I had Vanquish the Horde in my hand and I would have wiped your board and I would have gone off and done my thing. Vanquish the Horde has a niche. I think that there is a spot for it in those higher power level games. It's just not going to help you at instant speed, and I guess that's why Cyclonic Rift exists. Vanquish the Horde, nonetheless, is incredibly powerful, should not be slept on, and you should go out and you should get a few copies to slot into all of your white decks, because I see this card skyrocket. Number 2. We've all seen this card skyrocket. We've all seen it go up in price, and we all sit there and we all regret not getting it at $15 or $16 or even $13, I think it was at release. But Meathook Massacre is really, really good. It's like unbelievably good. Nasty. So X and 2 black gets you a neg-X for the whole board. And then whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. And whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Nasty. Oh my god. Like, that's just the old Blood Artist effect, the Bastion of Remembrance. If you guys haven't checked out my Tayam deck profile,
nasty,
you can find it in the description below. This card went in instantly, because Tayam can just fetch it. Renegade Wrathier can just fetch this card from the graveyard and put it onto the battlefield, and then when you go off, you can just drain everybody's life totals.
Nasty.
It just sings. This card is so good.
Nasty.
I don't know, it's just so flexible. There's just a lot to it.
Nasty.
Unbelievable. Really, really unbelievable.
Nasty.
There's not much more to be said about Meathook Massacre, because you just read it. Like, just read it. There's nothing more to it. It is just nasty. How much more do you want to know? How much more can I talk about it? Talk. I'm talking. Meathook Massacre.
Nasty.
The number 1 card. If there's one thing that people generally know about me is I'm very dramatic. And so I hope you're ready for this one. Number 1! It's number 1! There comes a time in our lives when something happens or crosses our paths that determines the trajectory for the rest of our lives. Moonsilver Key is unbelievable! I love this card. Bleep that shit out, because I'm passionate. I'm very passionate about this one. I think this card's incredible. And there's one thing, like, when it comes to like ranking cards, flexibility weighs heavily. And this is like, hits that perfect sweet spot of like, this goes in every casual deck. This goes in every high power deck. The things that this thing can grab are unbelievable. I'm speechless as far as the broad nature of Moonsilver Key. It grabs a basic land too, and that's where it kind of hits those lower power levels. It's like, you can keep a 2-land hand, which I do most of the time, but now when I see it and I have a Moonsilver Key, I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I just, if I draw a land or if I draw some ramp, like, I can just use the Moonsilver Key to generate presence later in the game. Like in Xeris, Writhing Storm. I will sacrifice it and go get an Ashnod's Altar or something like that, just so I can keep generating value and turn those snakes into profit. I put it right into Tayam. Go fetch that thing with Renegade Rallier. Like, oh my god, beat the dead horse, why don't ya? Put it in everything. Just go get it. Like, it grabs a soul ring. It goes in every deck. The card pool right now is so saturated with them. They're so cheap. They're so cheap. I felt foolish. I felt like I was like taking crazy pills or something, because I went and I bought 8 foils for like $1.50 a piece, and I thought like, oh, I guess the card might not be as good as I think it is. But there was one thing that I did with this top 5 review that I didn't do with the Strixhaven review, was I sat and I waited to see these cards play before I decided to rank them. And the first time that I played Moonsilver Key, it literally changed the game. It put me so far out ahead of the rest of the table that I just outright won. And so when you see a card that performs like that and you're just like, yeah, I'll just crack it and see what I go get. Yeah, you know, just yeah, I'll grab Soul Ring. Or, yeah, I'll grab Mana Crypt. Or, oh yeah, I'll grab Mana Vault. Grab Phyrexian Altar. I'll grab KCI. Yeah, you know, I'll just grab my win condition. It can grab the Great Henge, for God's sakes. That is the base level of what it can do for you, and that's saying a lot. It really does say a lot to be able to go get something like that. This card really does push the envelope for power at uncommon. I know I said I could be dramatic, but there's a realistic tone behind it as well. They're always going to be printing cards with activated abilities or mana abilities, artifacts with mana abilities in future sets. Like, that's just going to happen. This is a card that you're going to look for in future decks that you're going to build. It's just a good idea to stock up on them, because I don't think it's a card that you'll ever really want to slot out of a deck. It scales up with power. I guess it grabs Treasure Vault too. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this top 5 countdown for commander cards from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. Be sure to subscribe below, hit that little bell. In the description below, you can find our Discord server where we're setting up like a conversation about these cards. There's actually a local Seattle Playgroup tab channel on there now. And if you're in the area, be sure to hop on there. We're just talking about like when we can get together, when we can play, and what power level to expect. We're doing great things, everybody. Be sure to share this with your friends, share this with everybody you know, because it's getting serious. Call Me Commander is on the rise. We'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching. Oh, don't forget to like the video.